Hello and welcome to another installment of Blind Eye Live, the flagship show of fledgling internet media company Blind Eye Media. I'm your host, Hunter King, Blind Eye himself, owner and proprietor of Blind Eye Media. So we got some more NBA trade deadline thoughts from yesterday. The Victor Oladipo trade came in kind of late, or at least the details came in kind of late. Because I was working on getting through the Orlando Magic triumvirate of trades. So we're gonna talk a little more about the Victor Oladipo deal, and we're gonna get to, I believe there was another trade that Chicago made that flew under the radar right at the end of the deadline, and I didn't see till later on the evening, where apparently they have acquired Daniel Theis from the Boston Celtics. So I don't know what the Celtics got for him. So that's kind of interesting. And that also helps a little bit of the offense-defense balance for Chicago. Not that Theis is an amazing defender, because he's not like a great rim protector, but he's much better defensively than Mo Wagner. And then Lauri Markkanen at the 5. So we're going to get to that. But some big blockbuster NFL trades have happened in the last 2 hours. Really, like last hour, hour and a half. So we're going to get into those, because these are big moves, because these, to a degree, show exactly what these teams are thinking in the draft even. So the San Francisco 49ers have traded the number 12 pick, their third round compensatory selection that they are getting for Robert Salah being hired as part of that new diversity coaching thing that the NFL is doing, because now they're giving you draft picks for having minority coaches hired away from your program or from your team, because somehow that's supposed to incentivize teams to hire coaches. Because they'll get stuff when people take them from them. That seems smart. But anyway, kudos for the 49ers for getting a free third round pick. For hiring a good defensive coordinator and having someone hire him away to be head coach. So anyway, San Francisco, 12th pick, a third round pick this year, which will be somewhere probably like around pick 100 at the end of the third round. You're going to get, and then they're trading their 2022 and 2023 first round picks to the Miami Dolphins for the third overall pick and pick one. Let me double check here. Pick 123? No. Wait. Here, let me double check this. Cat, if you bite me, you are going to regret it. As in, I'm going to put you out of the room. Sorry, I'm running through ESPN.com here real quick. Let's see. Alright, I have it up here. So, the San Francisco 49ers have traded... What the heck? Sorry, my computer's being kind of dumb. So yeah, they just traded number 3 for number 12. A third round. Oh, actually, the third round pick's not this year. The third round pick is next year. So number 12 this year. Number 12 this year, a third round pick in 2022, a first rounder in 2022, and a first rounder in 2023. From there, so these two big NFL trades are linked because then the Eagles were like, or either Miami called up the Eagles or the Eagles called up Miami. Miami then sent number 12, number 123, and their own 2022 first round pick to the Eagles in exchange for numbers or for the 6th overall pick and pick 156 in this year's draft, which 156 I believe is either at the, I want to say is like the top of the 5th round. Hello, cat. My cat sleeps all day until I'm doing something and then he wants my attention. So yes. So these are some big deals because it says a lot about what these teams are angling for. Obviously, Miami is sold on Tua Tagovailoa. As if anyone other than stupid mainstream media people who are desperate to keep their ratings up and to get clicks on their stuff. Like, they're the only people that thought that Tua Tagovailoa was not going to be the main quarterback option for the Miami Dolphins this year. Those are the only people. And that's just because they're faking half of what they're saying. I'm not talking about the ESPN insiders or necessarily. Well, I say ESPN, but like NFL insider types who share information. But a lot of the information they share that they get from sources, a lot of it is them are smoke screens. Anyone with half a brain could see what the Dolphins were doing with their team and seeing the moves that they were already making and just listening to what they were saying publicly. Tua is their guy. They drafted him with the number 5 overall pick last year. This isn't like when Arizona drafted or traded a few mid-round picks to move up a few spots to get Josh Rosen at number 11. And then their team was so bad, and he was so bad that they had the number 1 pick the next year. Because Rosen hasn't rebounded. Rosen was given a shot with Miami in 2019. And he didn't cut it there either. And, a lot of people could say, he didn't have good offensive lines. A lot of guys don't have good offensive lines and still make something happen. David Carr was better than Josh Rosen. And he had a crap offensive line. So, the Dolphins weren't in a situation where they're thinking, Tua's not our guy. And Tua showed a lot last year considering his wide receivers were constantly rotating, getting hurt. And you had such a win-now philosophy there that, to a degree, he was playing safe a lot. But you also had games that he absolutely won them the game. Like when he outdueled Kyler Murray and Arizona. And yes, there were times they turned to Ryan Fitzpatrick, but that to a degree is because Fitzpatrick, they needed some more aggression, and so they pulled Tua out and put Fitzpatrick in, and it showed Tua what Miami needed in that situation. Sometimes you have to move past not making the mistakes, which is good for a rookie quarterback to come in and try and make the right play and not make bad plays. But sometimes you have to take risks. You have to put the ball down the field. You have to trust your abilities. And Tua has tremendous ability at the position. And he was also coming off a major hip surgery from the previous fall, he wasn't like 100% comfortable and back yet in the lower body. He will be this year. So Miami, this just goes further to prove Tua Tagovailoa is the starting quarterback there. 2, it also shows that Miami is looking at a very long-term approach of, we trust our scouting, and we also believe that we need to keep getting as many bites at the apple that is the NFL draft as possible every year. Because those young players with potential also have super cheap contracts compared to players of similar talent who are like veterans. It's like free agent contracts and, veteran contracts, they're more expensive. You don't get as much excess value in the team building process. The Dolphins understand that. And what they did is they moved down, acquired a haul for that, and then were able to strike a deal with the Eagles to move up, or to move back up 6 spots, and still put themselves in a position where at least one of there are 5 players that I could see, or that I see the Dolphins, like, really, I guess maybe 6 if you include Kyle Pitts. But I think Pitts and Gesicki is not as good as Kyle Pitts, but he's already been in the league a little bit, and he's about somewhere, he can be like 90% of what I think Kyle Pitts is going to be. Gesicki's a great player. He's 80-90% as Kyle Pitts. He's already on the roster. They maybe you could play them both together, but I don't know. I think they need to improve at wide receiver. So I'm taking Pitts out of this equation for the Dolphins. At least one of Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, and Jalen Waddle should be on the board at 6, if not more than one. It's possible, or I would consider, especially with 3 receivers going off the board, what I'm assuming will be, or I think 3 quarterbacks will go off the board in the top 4 picks with the way things stand out, and it's possible 4 do. So we still don't know what the Jets are doing with Sam Darnold and the number 2 pick. Whether they're keeping Darnold and drafting someone to help him at number 2, or if they're trading Darnold and drafting a QB of the future at number 2. So if we're saying picks 1 and 3 are definitely quarterbacks, because I don't see why the 49ers would be trading up like this otherwise, and 1 of 2 and 4 end up being quarterbacks, which I would assume, then, because I mentioned those receivers, that leaves 2 picks in the top 5 that aren't on quarterbacks right now, which means out of the 5 guys that I would say Miami would be targeting here, you've got Penei Sewell and Rashawn Slater, the top 2 offensive tackles. You have Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith. Let me bring this down here. Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, and Jalen Waddle, the top 3 receivers. And then, of course, you got Kyle Pitts. And then after his pro day, maybe Micah Parsons moves up to where you're considering him at 6. Because Parsons in the Dolphins defense could be insane. That guy's like if Kyle Van Noy was on super serum in terms of his ooh, bless me. Micah Parsons is like a freak athlete. The dude's like 242 pounds, I think. 235. Somewhere between 235 and 245. At like 6'2 or so. 6'3. And he ran a 4.39 40, I think it was yesterday, at his pro day, which is insane. And he put up some other crazy athletic numbers. And he had really good tape through his first 2 college seasons. Although I would have liked to have seen him play last year. I would have liked to seen particularly some improvement in his coverage game. Like, he's made plays in coverage, but just more consistency. But this guy has all the tools and the history on tape. Because I want to say this guy also, like, he played safety, I think, in high school or whatever. Like, this guy could be, has, like, skills that would, that, like, a safety would have in terms of speed and range. He has the body of a 3-4 outside linebacker and plenty of explosion. Like, this guy has elite pass rushing traits. This guy has potentially elite coverage traits. And the guy is obviously fast enough, strong enough, and takes good enough angles to be an elite run defender too. This guy could play any linebacker position. So, particularly physically. So you could get a guy with, like, the versatility of Kyle Van Noy with Captain America's physical attributes if you're Miami. So maybe he's in play there. But you're going to have several of the Smith, Chase, Waddle, Sewell, Slater, Pitts, Parsons group right there at 6. And to get the Eagles, or to get back up to 6, like, they gave up their 2022 first, so they're betting on, like, themselves being really good this year, maybe even better than the 49ers, or at least in the same ballpark this year. Or they think the 49ers are going to decline, which is possible. Well, I say decline. They're not going to decline from, say, where they finished this past year, because I think they'll be better than that. But maybe they're not Super Bowl contenders. Or they're no better contenders than the Dolphins, which would be a slip from where people project them. So we shall see on that front. But the Dolphins sold on Tua for now. And, you know, they added ammo, but then they made sure they moved back up so they can get one of the elite talents in this draft. I think that's incredible business by them. And, I mean, these guys are working like some assassins right now. I really like what they're doing. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure this is centered. Anyway, so really like that, or the Dolphins moves today. For the 49ers, you're not trading up like this for anything other than a quarterback in this draft, based on what people are saying. Even if I think that Jalen Phillips is a all-world pass rushing prospect who deserves top 10 consideration, I still wouldn't move that many picks to move up and get Jalen Smith. You're doing this for a quarterback, and potentially a particular one. I bet you the 49ers called up or the Jets and asked them about what they were doing potentially. But it in this situation, it really seems like it made more sense I think for what the Jets are doing, if they are not going to move on from Darnold, they need to wait as close to the draft as they can to move number 2. And if they are moving on from Darnold, then obviously you're not trading number 2 pick for anything. So, but I would say San Fran must have kicked the tires on the Jets. I feel like they would have had to have before they made this deal. Or San Fran is very comfortable with multiple quarterback prospects. Because right now, we know Trevor Lawrence is going 1. There's a big debate. For most people, the debate is Zach Wilson, Justin Fields is quarterback 2, which it's not for me. Wilson's quarterback 2. The argument is who is quarterback 3 and why. And I personally would take Lance over Fields. And of course, I'm the crazy person that loves Mac Jones a lot and thinks he's really the third best quarterback prospect. But, well, in terms of, I think he's going to be better right off the bat. And I think people are discounting his ability to improve at the NFL level and discounting how good he can be at the NFL level. And not counting enough on the fact that just because a guy has a crazy ceiling doesn't mean that guy's going to get there. You have to think about the likelihood of a guy getting to that ceiling. So, but I would say that 49ers are looking at Lance or Fields or Wilson at 3. It's going to be one of those 3. And if I was looking at like who I think would be the best in Shanahan's system, well, I don't know. I think if they're going to be playing for Kyle Shanahan, they're probably all safe bets. I think Wilson is the farthest along out of the 3. And he has great physical attributes, although not as elite physical attributes as Fields or Lance. But I would love to see Trey Lance there. Because I think he's the most physically gifted of those 3 guys. Personally. Although Fields isn't far off. So, I mean, but we'll see on draft day. Or draft night. Which is a little over, or like a month away, maybe? I'm trying to think now. I think it's at the end of April. So, but, which this is interesting because then it's like, well, the 49ers, they're in, it's like, the 49ers are in win now mode. Like, this team was, or lost in the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago, and were a Super Bowl favorite this past year before injuries just dismantled that team, including Jimmy Garoppolo getting hurt again. And I'll tell you what, I bet you the 49ers have considered moving Jimmy Garoppolo this year. Probably have kicked the tires on a number of trades, and I bet you he doesn't have value anymore. Or I say he doesn't have value. His value isn't what you would expect it to be because of the injuries. And to a degree because that one missed throw that lost them that Super Bowl. So, I'm a fan. I mean, and that doesn't mean that I don't believe in Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback. Because, if anything, I've been sitting here like, if the New England offers their first round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, San Fran should take it, and New England maybe should do that. Although I would say New England should see if they can get him for less than that first. Because I'd even consider if I was San Fran, if I could get if they could trade him using their second round, if they could get a second round pick for him. Which some people are like, that wouldn't be a whole lot. Like, well, ask for a third or a fourth too. But if they could get a first, heck yeah, trade him. I would say do it for a second. Because that's still a really good player. And like now, with what they've given up, they need to replenish some sort of picks somehow. Garoppolo could do that, but they probably would have had to a bit earlier. Because like for New England now, you've signed Cam Newton, although it's a heavily incentivized deal. It's like, I think you only owe him like $5 million guaranteed, that's not terrible for a backup or for a really good backup quarterback situation. And for Garoppolo, when he comes over, it's like he's making 20 something million, I think. Because like all his guaranteed money would stay with the 49ers, which isn't actually a ton now. Because they signed him to a really team-friendly contract, even though the number at the time was kind of big, like the total money per year at like, what was it, 27.5 million a year. But I don't know. I think the Tannehill, sorry. I think now, some of my friends are like, well, having multiple good QBs isn't a problem. It's like, just keep Garoppolo and have him be there and you develop the QB behind him. But I don't know how that's going to work, really. Like, personally. I would just get him out of there. Because I can't remember if Mullins and Beathard are both free agents, or if only one of them is, or if they're both still under contract. But you could get back one of those guys, and they're okay, pretty good, okay to pretty good. I don't know, pretty good. They're like solid backup options. They're not the best, but there are worse options. It's better than Mike Glennon. I'd rather have them than like Chase Daniel, or people can meme all they want. I'd rather have them than Chad Henne. Because I think the Chiefs got a little lucky with what they got out of Chad Henne. So, anyway, 49ers are drafting a QB now. That situation with Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be very interesting. Because they're obviously not drafting an offensive tackle. At least I wouldn't think. You just signed Trent Williams and you have Mike McGlinchey there. Maybe you draft Slater at 3 and you put him in it, or put him at one of your guard positions and just say you have the best offensive line in football. But I don't know. That seems like I would think that's a bad management or resource management thing when you could have just drafted like Elijah Vera Tucker at 12 and maybe even traded down and got him. Yeah. And I don't think they're trading up for like one of the top receivers. They've got Ayuk, they've got Samuel that they've spent, first and second round picks on. And I think they traded up for Ayuk. Like they moved up a few spots to get Ayuk. So yeah, they did. So I would say that that's not it. I don't think they traded up for Pitts, although imagine having Kyle Pitts and George Kittle with Ayuk and Samuel. That would be kind of dirty, actually. Like, you got Samuel in the slot and you just put Pitts outside as like your number one receiver and just dare any corner who isn't like Jalen Ramsey to try and cover this guy. That would actually be kind of interesting in like a 3 wide receiver set. But they tend to really like running 1 or 2 tight ends. They love having their fullback on the field. So, I don't know. I'm saying quarterback here, and of the athletic variety. So I'm not thinking Mac Jones. Although Mac Jones is, I would think, is a little. I don't know what Garoppolo's combine numbers were, but he doesn't show the movement skills that Mac Jones does, even though Mac Jones isn't super fast. I think he ran like a 4.8 640 or whatever. Although you get, not that Alabama doesn't have an amazing training program, but if Mac Jones wanted to add some explosion, I think in an NFL like program or training program, he could absolutely do it, like a little more. Maybe get down to sub 4.8 40. But he's got good wiggle. Like, I really like Mac Jones, and Mac Jones would. I wouldn't even be surprised if Mac Jones was an upgrade on Jimmy Garoppolo from day one. I'm really high on Mac Jones, though. So, but they're not trading up to number 3 to draft Mac Jones. And as much as I believe in Mac Jones, I still don't know if I could take him over. I have reservations about Justin Fields. I'm a little biased there. Some people could call me crazy, that's fine. It's like I listed Mac Jones as my QB3, but it's really close, and I'm now I probably would put Lance ahead of Mac Jones just because his physical tools, the system he was at in North Dakota State, and the system at North Dakota State asked him to do a lot more than most college QBs and most Division I QBs. So I think in that regard, Lance is actually further along than I think a lot of people would think. So Lance is right there with Jones. And he definitely, like, if you want to use the term ceilings, which ceiling is sometimes an overused word, because these are players who are 21, 22, 23 with a lot of growth ahead of them. Like, I mean, even a 23-year-old player, maybe a 23, and then you get some of these guys who are like 24 that end up they're not usually first round guys because they're smaller school guys or that were like 5th year seniors, whatever. But these guys have growth potential because for a lot of small school guys, even the best small school programs still don't have top of the line strength and conditioning training programs. Those guys can get faster and stronger and quicker, more explosive. And they still have more to learn about the game. So we use this term ceiling, like Mac Jones, although Mac Jones at his pro day showed that he has an arm. And actually, if anything, Mac Jones has a little Baker Mayfield to him in that regard. Like, a lot of people were, until like his pro day and whatnot, people were dogging Baker Mayfield for having, like, there were some people saying like he didn't have any arm strength. People were saying he had merely average arm strength, and he has like really good zip on his ball. Like, he's got, the ball really does pop off of Baker's hands. He's not Josh Allen, but no one's Josh Allen. But he's way closer to like Josh Allen than he is to Tom Brady and Drew Brees in that regard. So I would say Mac Jones is closer to Baker Mayfield than he is to like old Drew Brees and Tom Brady in that regard with his arm strength. So but yeah, so I mean, I keep coming back to this, but 49ers, this is really interesting, like what's going to go on with him and Jimmy G. With that being said, now we're going to move into the third team involved in this, the Philadelphia Eagles. And so the Dolphins took their 2022 first-round pick, a fourth-round pick at number 123, and number 12, and moved back up to get to number 6, which was, where the Eagles were picking, and got 156. The Eagles probably aren't taking a quarterback now, unless they think Mac Jones is going to be available at 12, which is highly possible, or they think maybe one of the other more athletic quarterbacks like falls, but I don't see that happening necessarily. I don't see that happening. So the Eagles, who maybe it's like the owner has said that he would like he wants the team to focus on building around Jalen Hurts. So you move back to 12. Now that moves you out of like the elite receiver range unless you think Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith's going to fall. Which, heck, Bucky Brooks had Devontae Smith falling to the Dolphins at 18 or the Washington football team at 19 in his latest mock draft, which was a joke. I mean, that was... It's like, I get that. Because Daniel Jeremiah, during the Move the Sticks podcast, Move the Sticks podcast with Bucky Brooks, he was talking about, how he thought it was a great mock, that mocks are about, creating discussion, yeah. But there's a difference between making a mock draft that creates discussion and having an elite prospect fall to 19 just because whatever reason he had for just everybody just not picking Devontae Smith until then. Because, I just thought that was crazy. Devontae Smith is an elite receiver prospect. I would have taken him over every receiver drafted last year by the grades I had those guys at last year and where I have him now. I did have Justin Jefferson as my top wideout. I will continue to say that as often as I possibly can. I had Justin Jefferson as the number one wideout in the 2020 rookie receiver class. But based on where he was when he left and where Smith is, although he tested the combine and he had a huge combine that bumped his stock up anyway for a lot of people. Although it didn't shock me that he put up that Justin Jefferson put up the athletic testing numbers that he did, because I saw it on his tape at LSU. But yeah. So I just don't see Devontae Smith falling that far. And I don't even see Devontae Smith falling to the Eagles at 12. Now, maybe Jalen Waddle, but it seems like a lot of scouts have Waddle rated ahead of Smith because he's, about the hand across, just here was bothering me. Jalen Waddle's just elite speed and his agility and playmaking skills with the ball. Like, so many people are like just so tantalized with that. And with Jamar Chase, he's a thicker, stronger receiver. Seems to be more explosive than Devontae. So they have him number one, and I can understand having Chase number one. I don't have Waddle in the same tier necessarily with him with Chase and Smith, because I think Chase and Smith are like surefire, like can't miss stud receiver prospects. I think Waddle has stud potential, but he's not as all around a receiver as Smith and Chase, and he's not that much more he's probably significantly faster than those guys, but that's it. I don't think he's a better receiver, though, than either of those guys. So his speed puts him into elite prospect territory, but you look at Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore ran a 4.29 40, 42.5-inch vertical. This dude was squatting 600-plus pounds as a 180-pound college freshman at Purdue. This guy's strong. He had a ridiculous broad jump. Rondale Moore, I would say Rondale Moore is right there with Jalen Waddle. He had the big freshman season, then he had a lot of injury problems sophomore year. And then last year he opted out and then opted in. And I think he only played like 3 games or something like that. And didn't necessarily light the world on fire. But Rondale Moore is an elite athlete prospect. So if we're going to, and he's a more well-rounded athlete than Waddle is, because he's a lot stronger. Waddle, I think, is a little bit taller and a little bit longer, but he's not as thickly or strongly built as Moore. Moore has power to his game along with the elite speed and elusiveness. And I think he's got more talent as a downfield contested catch receiver than Waddle. But we have Waddle like way up here, and Moore's not. And I'd argue Moore probably belongs in discussion with Waddle for receiver 3. So, and I just don't agree with Pro Football Focus, because Pro Football Focus has Waddle rated ahead of Smith, and I think I almost wanted to say they had him rated ahead of Chase too, but I think I'm wrong on that. Like, I don't get it. Like, I get Waddle is fast, and he has, like, receiving talent. It's not like he's just a speedy receiver. He's got good hands. He runs pretty good routes, although he's nowhere near Smith or even Chase in that regard, in my opinion. But Waddle has been explosive and making big plays his entire college career, and then he got hurt halfway through last season, and he was playing extremely, extremely well last season. And a lot of people, one of the arguments is that Waddle was Alabama's wide receiver number 1, not Devontae Smith this year. That depends on what you view as a number 1 receiver. Because the same thing was said about Justin Jefferson. Jamar Chase was clearly the number 1 receiver at LSU, even though Jefferson had, and he might have finished the season more targets even if he didn't have as many yards, and I think he and Chase basically had the same amount of touchdowns. But because Jefferson was playing a lot of time in the slot and Chase was getting targeted downfield a little more, he was the number 1. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, because I think they were both number 1 options. Because elite passing offenses have 2 number 1 options, basically. I mean, you look at, say, the St. Louis Rams during the Greatest Show on Turf era. You have Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, who are both Hall of Fame level receivers. I think Bruce finally made it, and Holt should. And if Bruce has it, because I want to say Bruce got inducted, or is getting inducted. I need to look again. But I know for the longest, both of them weren't in the Hall of Fame, and they both deserve it. They both deserve to be there. You have Randy Moss and Chris Carter in Minnesota in the late 90s, which is ridiculous. Ridiculous. That's 2 number 1 receivers. That's 2 elite targets. And even look at, like, San Francisco in the late 90s. You had older Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice was still a top shelf, like, legit number 1 receiver. And you had a young Terrell Owens who was an elite, or who was coming into his own as an elite receiver. And heck, Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne with the Colts in the 2000s with Peyton Manning. Both of those guys were top-level receivers. When Harrison retired, Wayne was the bona fide number 1 and continued to put up elite numbers. So I think some people look at, guys, and they see this role as the true number 1. Whereas I think Devontae Smith is a more skilled receiver and the better actual receiver than Waddle. Waddle is the better athlete. But Smith is better at more things than Waddle. Like, in terms of playing the receiver position. Devontae Smith, he's not the biggest, strongest receiver, but he's actually an elite contested catch receiver at the college level. So is Chase. So I don't know. I think they're ahead. But at this point, I don't think the Eagles get any of those 3. because even after taking Galladay, I could still see the Giants drafting like Waddle if he's available at 11. And I think the Dolphins are going to draft one of those three guys at receiver. Or at number 6. So what do the Eagles do at 12 now? Is the big question. With Brandon, if their offensive linemen are healthy this year, because Kelsey decided to, or was convinced to play another year at center. Brandon Brooks hopefully is back healthy. You have Lane Johnson at right tackle. Andre Dillard hopefully is going to be their left tackle and make strides this year. I can't remember who their left guard is or who their other guard is. Sorry. I was like, my cat had been under my desk next to me and he was gone. I was like, uh-oh, where'd he go? I really don't. I just don't know what the Eagles are going to do now, because there's part of me that's like, well, they could really go anywhere because of the places that they've typically focused on as strengths, like their position or their guys that they could draft in that range at those positions to keep those as strengths. Do they attack weaknesses? Because obviously receiver's a big need for them. So it almost seems like they're hoping that one of those top 3 receivers slides. Otherwise, maybe the Eagles trade down again. Or they take where people would feel maybe is a reach on some of these receivers. But I can understand, especially with what I saw from him his freshman year and his combine numbers, I could see you being able to justify that Rondale Moore at number 12. Terrace Marshall, I could understand at number 12. Up until recently, where he seems to just be backsliding, like Rashad Bateman, it seemed like was a potential like kind of lock to go somewhere between like either maybe even at the end of the top 10, but I was thinking somewhere between like or outside the top 10, but before but by pick 20. Like you put him somewhere around 15, like Bateman makes sense in that range. So, but I don't know. So if we're looking outside the receiver position, Pitts plays tight end or is listed as a tight end, although he is, for me, he's an elite playmaking pass catcher because he's a wide receiver in a tight end's body who also can play inline tight end because he's a better blocker than, like, say I mentioned him earlier, Mike Gesicki, who's like in the same full kind of mold as a prospect, although I think he's a better all-around player than Gesicki, like at everything. So maybe Pitts is available at 12. The Eagles should jump on that with the way they like to run their offense. And you've got Rieger that you drafted in the first round last year. So to me, like, you draft Waddle, and yes, Waddle's a better all-around player than Rieger, but their mold as prospects is pretty much the same. So and honestly the same with Rondale Moore. So really I would be looking at like a Terrace Marshall, Rashad Bateman type. Or not that those two guys are exactly the same, but they're bigger bodied, stronger receivers. Marshall with more explosion and Bateman with more technique. Then you've got like offensive line. It's like maybe we don't believe in Dillard now. So maybe we go with the best offensive tackle available, which at this range probably Christian Darrisaw. Some people would say Samuel Cosme. I know there are some teams that would probably say Liam Eichenberg or Jalen Mayfield. So there really aren't interior defensive linemen in this range. At least it seems or that doesn't seem to be the case for anyone. Although I like the top two guys that I consider interior linemen in this class. Christian Barmore, Levi Ricky of Washington. Well, and then Darrington Nixon of Iowa. So I guess like the top three guys. I really like those guys, but I don't really see any of those guys going before like pick 25. Maybe Barmore. Because I think maybe he's being a little undervalued, but I'm not sure. So I'm really the Eagles one is very curious because I'm like, man, you just traded down from like this spot where you could get an elite player at probably the position you need the most on your team, based on what you're doing right now, especially with like Hurts. He needs weapons. You've got Goddard. Yes, you drafted Rieger last year, but that was, in my opinion, that was a big reach last year. And getting like him a true number one like Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith would have been a really big get. But at the same time, the Eagles are old at a lot of positions. They need more young talent, and moving down allowed them to add a first-round pick for next year. They got a fourth-round pick this year just to move down 6 spots. But I think a lot of the elite prospects at the positions that they need, like Surtain and Caleb Farley, probably off the board by 12. I don't know if Parsons is going to be available at 12 because Parsons would be an awesome piece for their defense. So I really don't know. I'm a little. It's like for the Eagles, I'm kind of confused. Like I'm usually not opposed to like trading down, but out of the 3 teams, like, and I'm not always a big fan of trading up, especially if you're giving up like a lot to move up. Like if you get an elite quarterback and he works out, that trade up that trade up's like a good job or a good move. If like your team gets better, they didn't win a Super Bowl off of it, but the Rams trade up for Jared Goff worked out. People could say whatever they want, it worked out. They got to the Super Bowl. And they did such a good job of finding, talent at other places in the draft and outside the first round, that making all these trades with their first-round picks has worked really well for them in team building. And yes, they've sacrificed multiple first-round picks in Goff now to go get Stafford, but they upgraded their quarterback position again, and they still have a really good roster, even if they did lose 2 big pieces in their secondary this offseason. They've done a really good job of replacing people. They lost Corey Littleton going into last year. And it honestly didn't affect their defense that much. So when you look at things in that light, if the 49ers don't just totally miserably fail in evaluating quarterbacks and they're able to develop this quarterback, they have a strong roster. I get why they took the chance. They've done a good job of finding and developing guys late in the other rounds of the draft, like Dre Greenlaw, like Fred Warner. like Emmanuel Mosley, who I think was an undrafted free agent. I believe Jaquiski Tart was, which he's a free agent, and I can't remember if he signed elsewhere or if he hadn't re-signed yet, but he's been good for them. They didn't draft him in the first round. George Kittle was a 5th-round pick. Deebo Samuel, 2nd-round pick. Raheem Mostert was a... I don't even know if they drafted Mostert. He might have been an undrafted guy. I know Matt Breida was an undrafted guy that they developed. I believe they drafted Beathard with a late-round pick, but Nick Mullins was an undrafted free agent. They've done it at quarterback. I don't want to just go through every draft pick they've made, every player on the roster, but they've done a good job of finding and developing talent, and they've done a really good job with their free agent signings. So the 49ers can afford to take a risk like this because they have the organizational structure and the roster quality to do this. But I still am not a huge fan of trading up. Miami, I really loved that trade down and getting all those picks, and then they packaged them and moved back up to 6, but I get it. They still came out with more than they had when they made the first trade, after the second trade. And they're positioning themselves, I believe, for an elite prospect or at one of the elite prospects in the draft. And they're going to be at positions that they need that or a player like that at, who is going to provide vastly more value than what their contract is going to owe them over the course of that contract. So I really it's like big win for the Dolphins today. I think this is a win for the Niners. Should I say it's a big move from the Niners? It's a declaration of intent, but I trust them. And for the most part, I trust Howie Roseman. Some people have been dogging Howie Roseman and all the stuff that's gone wrong with him recently, but it has less to do with Roseman, I think, and more to do with the coaching staff and also just injuries. Because Roseman's a good GM. Roseman built that Super Bowl roster for the Eagles. And I don't think he should let anyone forget that. He's been in that position for a long time, and he's made some really good moves and really good trades. He's aggressive. And I think I think he's gone, because when they won the Super Bowl, everyone was praising Roseman, this, and this. Now they've turned on it, or a bunch of people have turned on it just because of a lousy year, or some would say 2 lousy years, but I don't think that's his fault. And someone else who deserves a lot of credit, because he and Roseman are very similar in how they have approached team building, is Mickey Loomis, who I believe is still the GM down in New Orleans. He has done an amazing job with that team for years now. Built a Super Bowl winner there, has built a contending team for years now, and injuries, inexplicably bad refereeing, and just other freak things have kept them from winning another or playing for another. So those two guys, I think, deserve more credit than they get. So beyond the NFL or these big NFL trades, some signings that have happened this week that didn't get around to. The Titans signed Kevin Johnson, cornerback. He's played a lot of his career with the Texans. I think he spent some time with the Bills too, and or the Broncos. He might have started. He started off his career, I know, with the Texans. And I believe he played there for a period of time when Vrabel was the defensive coordinator there. So he comes in as an, I guess, solid veteran corner. I never saw what the money was, but if it's more than what Desmond King got, or the same, or around the same as Desmond King got to go to the Texans, I don't know why we didn't just bring Desmond King back. And we saw, and another signing that we had, Danico Autry, defensive tackle. Really liked that signing. Autry's been a really solid lineman for the Indianapolis Colts, and I think he'll pair really nicely at the 5 technique, at the other 5 technique across from Jeffrey Simmons for us. I think he's a 5 technique. Well, anyway, he's an interior lineman. He'll fit really well in our 3-4 scheme, I think. So I really like those, or I really like the Autry move. Johnson, yeah, I guess that's okay. I mean, we needed a corner. We need corners, so. And I want to say we actually brought in another like pass rusher type that I'm blanking on to go on with Dupree. So check back on that. So I'm gonna pull up ESPN again real quick because I wanted to check out the Theus, or that deal that might have sent Theus to the Celtics. Let's see. Nope, that's not what I'm looking for. Ooh. Zach Lowe put out a new article today, so if you have ESPN Plus, check out Zach Lowe's trade deadline analysis, because Zach Lowe always putting out. He's just a really great writer. His articles are fun to read, and he does really good research. These lights are hot. Got to keep hydrated. So since I'm switching to NBA news, one thing that was announced today, the Grizzlies have said that they expect Jaren Jackson Jr. to be back by the end of April. Which means he'll play a few games this year, maybe. Which is great. Let's see. Alright, so here we go. Orlando Magic trade. Dadgummit. I hate auto-playing ads on ESPN. Oh, does this have it in there? Because yesterday I saw. Okay, this has all the moves the Bulls made. Or at least I think it does. Okay, so here's the other deal. So the Bulls acquired Daniel Theus and shooting guard Javonte Green from the Celtics. That's interesting because if I'm not mistaken, the Celtics kind of really like Javonte Green. He's a really athletic, hard effort player, who I really like as like a into the rotation kind of guy. In exchange, Chicago sent Mo Wagner and Luke Cornett, which that's interesting. So the Bulls acquired Mo Wagner and Troy Brown Jr. from the Wizards for Daniel Gafford and Chandler Hutchison. Yesterday. And then I guess they then rerouted Wagner along with former New York Knick Luke Cornett, because that's where I remember Cornett from originally. It was his time with the Knicks. Cornett, who's another big, sent both of them to the Celtics for Theus and Javonte Green, which that one's kind of confusing to me because Wagner definitely provides more offensive oomph than Theus. I guess they like Cornett, but I felt like they gave up maybe Wagner is better than Javonte Green, but I feel like the Celtics gave up the best young player in the deal in Javonte Green, like in terms of his long-term potential. And they gave up the best player right now in Daniel Theus. So I don't know if that move saved them money. If it saves them money next year. Or they just really like Mo Wagner. Yeah, I really don't know. That's kind of a weird one, but kudos to the Bulls for stealing Theus. And Theus is kind of like... Theus is actually exactly the kind of player the Bulls were kind of wanting to target. Obviously, Vucevic is going to be their starting center, and Theus, I guess, can play next to Vooch because he can shoot a little bit. And him playing some power forward maybe mitigates some of his lack of size. But that's interesting. What this tells me is the Celtics are going potentially all in on... I don't know if Robert Williams is going to become the starting center. Maybe that's going to be Tristan Thompson. I don't necessarily love that. I'd rather it be Robert Williams, but hopefully this means the Celtics are just going to play with... We're going to develop Robert Williams, and we're going to give him the minutes and sink or swim time. That's what I would hope. That's interesting. Very, very interesting. Which, I mentioned it towards the end of the stream, but I was having to wrap up pretty quick. So, Victor Oladipo is now with the Miami Heat, and the Heat basically stole him from Houston, as far as I'm concerned. Here, let me grab my phone real quick. Okay. So Miami traded Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and the rights to swap first-round picks in the 2022 draft, which is interesting because obviously Houston is going to be picking much earlier than the Heat this year. I don't know how or know why Houston would think that Miami might be picking higher in the draft than Houston next year for those swap rights to matter, though. Because it's not like Jimmy Butler's not going to be on the Heat next year. From what it appears like, it doesn't seem like Tyler Hero isn't going to be there. Or if they end up making some other move that they won't have someone better than Hero next year. I don't know why I mentioned him before, Bam. But Jimmy and Bam are going to be there next year. Feel like Miami traded for Oladipo because they think they'll bring him back, or that they're planning on bringing him back. But Miami without Oladipo was already a better team than Houston. So I'm really confused at what I mean, and I guess there just wasn't a market for people like, or no one was wanting to give up anything really for Oladipo because he's a free agent this offseason. And he hasn't proven that he's fully back yet. He's been really up and down. But I still would have expected something a little more than this. Like, Avery Bradley's basically expiring contract. Kelly Olynyk, I think, isn't expiring, or else he has one more year on his deal. But I mean, I'm super confused. I really don't get it. Like, Houston got nothing for Victor Oladipo. Like, literally nothing. They didn't even get an actual pick. They got swap rights that they're not going to be able to use because their pick's going to be higher in the draft than Miami's in 2022. Sorry, Houston fans. They could have had... It's like, and yes, Karis LeVert hasn't played yet, but they could have had Karis LeVert, and instead they rerouted him for Victor Oladipo to Indiana. And LeVert's got more, or has more time left on his contract. And yes, he has his own injury stuff, and obviously this thing with his kidney was a little scary, but I think ended up being like not quite as severe as it could have been. Like, it doesn't seem like it's going to affect his basketball playing future at all. Get ready for some lean, some really lean times, Houston, because you don't even have your own picks. And they botched an asset move here. Because I'd rather have LeVert than have nothing, which is what they have right now. Houston has nothing. Kelly Olynyk's a fine player. He's a fine rotation big. And maybe he and Wood next to each other it definitely provides you some shooting. But it's not helping your defense. Which I guess if you're wanting to lose a lot and get high picks from losing a lot, that'd be great. Except once again, you don't have any picks. You mean tell me you couldn't work out a deal with like Golden State that would have gotten you something of value? Something? I mean, Evan Fournier got 2 second-round picks. Oladipo got 2 players that aren't moving the needle for your team. And first-round swap rights that Houston's not going to be able to use. Or if they are, it's going to be a modern miracle, and it'll probably prove the existence of God to everybody, because Houston doesn't have anything to be good enough to be better than Miami in the 2021-2022 season. Christian Wood is really good. He's not that good. John Wall is probably going to hit a wall soon. He is playing really well this year, considering like the injuries he's had. But Wall and Wood do not a playoff team in the Western Conference make. Even if you add Eric Gordon. Who's on the team. Like, they don't have... Yeah, I mean, Houston was in a tough spot because, like, I get why you wouldn't want to give up anything, but, like, I expected someone would give up something. I mean, wasn't it, like, a couple years ago, like, the Detroit Pistons got, like, 4 second-round picks for the 30th pick in the first round, which ended up being Kevin Porter Jr.? At the very least, it was 3 second-round picks. For the last pick in the first round. Victor Oladipo's worth at least that as an expiring guy for a contender. So, Pat Riley is a wizard. He apparently does know the dark arts and can coerce anyone into any trade. Apparently, as long as it's, somewhat close, or like there's some kind of weird gray area about the value of the talent, he's gonna pull something that makes no sense to anyone with any kind of critical thinking ability. Tillman Fertitta has destroyed the Houston Rockets since buying the team. Not that it's all his fault, but between him and James Harden, the Rockets are dead. Very, very dead. Oof. And I mean, I'm not sure if Houston... Now, I can't remember this year, but does Houston have their own pick, at least for this year? Or does someone have swap rights on it? Or were they able to make a deal that got those swap rights revoked? Because if not, Oklahoma City's going to end up with their pick, I think. I think it's Oklahoma City. I would need to look at like some kind of mock draft or something that has like that stuff on it. But I feel bad for all my friends around here who are cute, because like, Southeast Texas, tons of Rockets fans around here. Oof. And it appears that Miami might be the favorite for LaMarcus Aldridge. If he gets bought out by the Spurs. Which, I mean, it seems like that's a thing. Which, that would be interesting, because, I mean, right now we're looking at the Heat. You're looking at a starting five of... Or, I say starting five. I'm not sure if Nunn or Dragic has been starting, but those are the 2 point guards for the Heat right now. You've got, on the wing, you would have Oladipo, Butler, Hero, Robinson, KZ Okpala, and Trevor Ariza, because of them trading Myers Leonard to the Thunder with I think it was a 2027 second round pick. And Yeah. And then as for like their big rotation, you have Bam, Precious Achua, their first round pick this year, and Nemanja Bjelica, who they acquired from the Kings for Mo Harkless and Chris Silva. And I'm not sure if they have another big on the roster, or at least because that's what I'm assuming. Like these are their like main rotation guys. So that's Dragic and Nunn. That's two guys. Like those are your 2 point guards. Then you've got Depot, Butler, Hero, Robinson, Akpala, and Ariza as like 6 guys who can play like in the 2, 3, and like and 4 spots. Not necessarily that all of them can play all those spots, but and then you've got Bam, Precious, and Nemanja. So that's 11. That's their 11 deep. I might be, and obviously they have a couple more guys who are, or several other guys under contract that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head right now. That's not terrible. Because Achiuwa is kind of like, I mean, he's like a discount Bam. Especially like defensively, he has like pretty much all the same tools as Bam defensively. It's actually kind of scary how similar they are in some ways. So he has like the perfect mentor. And I mean, you look at, regardless of which point guard they have on the court at any given time, because they don't exactly have the same exact skills, but Dragic and Nunn are both really good. You know, you look at your 2 through 5 kind of options. You have like Depot, Butler, Robinson, and Bam with one of those point guards. And then you can have like a pure bench unit that is one of those point guards with Hero, Ariza, Bjelica, and Achiuwa, or maybe KZ Akpala instead of, you know, one of those guys who's not Hero. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Maybe you put AZ in for Nemanja or Bjelica, whatever. But that's interesting. So Miami improving their team for free, and yeah, I mean losing Olynyk kind of hurts because probably rather have Olynyk than Nemanja, but I mean, and losing Myers Leonard kind of stinks, but if unless I'm mistaken, like Ariza's like only got 1 more year left on his deal, and the Heat had just signed like Leonard to like a 2-year deal, although the second year may have had a team option. I think Bjelica's on an expiring contract. So, I mean, the Heat should be able to open up some cap space this year. Well, because they were already going to be able to, but now I think they'll have max cap space, I think, in the summer. Like one max spot. Because Dragic's deal is 1 year, or it has a team option on year 2. So it's possible they could get a max player and potentially still bring everybody back. That's of real value to this team. Good job, Pat Riley. So I would say, like, from a trade deadline perspective, like, if we're just kind of looking around for, like, some winners and losers, I would say that Chicago was just on the standpoint of they made big decisions, they set a goal, and I think they met that goal. I think Chicago's a winner. They turned some of their young assets and some of the young assets who weren't necessarily working out for them into and some future picks, which you hate to let go of those, but at this stage they should at least be a playoff contender. So you're looking at, mid-teens kind of picks, like the tail end of the lottery to, the bottom playoff spots kind of picks. Like somewhere between like 11, 12 and 17, 18. That's where they probably were anyway, or at least were somewhere in there. So why not get a guy like Vooch who's going to improve your team now? And kind of put some more definition to who your team is now, and just go for the the end of the playoffs, and just bet on the young assets you already have continue to grow. Because Patrick Williams looks like he is going to be something. Kobe White has shown a lot of potential. Zach LaVine has developed a ton, and may still have, and he might still have some more development left in him. Lauri Markkanen still has some development left in him. I like what they're doing. I like the idea. I think Orlando were big winners. This team wasn't going anywhere. Orlando wasn't going anywhere with what they had this season. And some of these guys, like, their value, and they probably weren't going anywhere with their roster as it was if everyone was healthy. So you take these guys whose values, especially like Vucevic, his value was going forward, his value was never going to be more higher than it is right now. They got Wendell Carter Jr., a big expiring contract. We're able to get out of the Aminu contract too, and got two first round picks that were only top 4 protected. So unless the Bulls just fall flat on their face, like, Orlando's getting these picks, and they could end up, depending on injuries or other stuff with Chicago, if Chicago doesn't get some ridiculous lottery luck somehow, these could potentially be picks anywhere from 5 to 14, if the Bulls miss the playoffs. Or more likely, like, the floor for these Bulls teams probably is kind of where Orlando's been. Anywhere from like 7 to 12, or whatever, when Orlando's been kind of bad. So that's what you get for Vooch. You got 2 second-round picks for Evan Fournier. You got a 2025 first. Yeah, that's 4 years from now, but and Denver, they'll still have Jokic 4 years from now. I'd say they'll probably still have Jamal Murray. I don't think they're trading Michael Porter Jr. And Porter Jr. is going to be, or should be, amazing 4 years from now. Gordon, I think, is the oldest out of all those guys. But as athletic as he is, and in a better role, like, if he's still with the team like 4 years from now, like, Denver will probably still be really good in 2025. The real prize from the Gordon trade here is R.J. Hampton. And you have Gary Harris, who is a tradable vet. Like, Gary Harris, they should be able to move this offseason for something of value. Like, Orlando should be able to do that. So, and I really like R.J. Hampton. I mentioned yesterday, like, he has Zach LaVine. I believe I mentioned on here, he has Zach LaVine potential. 6'5", super fast, really athletic. He's got a nice handle. His jump shot's not broken. I think he's got like a 6'9" wingspan at 6'5". Like, this guy has potential on both sides of the ball, and he's been able to play like, or growing up, he was able to play with the ball in his hands. He's got point guard skills. You know, kind of a taller, longer body. And he's absolutely got scorer skills. Great in transition. Orlando just needs to give this guy minutes. They need to give Wendell Carter minutes. They need to... Maybe they should give Mo Bamba minutes, but they probably know enough about Mo Bamba at this point. Maybe he really is a bust. They need to give Cole Anthony as many minutes as possible. So Orlando team is going to be pretty bad the rest of the way. But they also might be really fun to watch at times. Fun and frustrating. Hopefully mostly fun. If not good. But Orlando needed to make these moves. Getting five draft picks over the next 5 drafts is helpful, along with getting like young pieces like Wendell Carter and R.J. Hampton to go with the young pieces they already have. So, and then and Denver's a big winner out of this. R.J. Hampton wasn't playing. That first round pick, who cares at this point? Gary Harris, I mean, yeah, he was really good for their defense, but he just hasn't been as good as he had been with them before. He didn't seem like he was getting back to that point. So having Will Barton just be the starting shooting guard, probably a better option at this point. You've been playing a bunch of like point guards anyway, and sometimes 3 of them at a time, if you consider PJ Dozier more of a point guard than a shooting guard. Gordon gives you like someone who can truly physically match up with the Kawhi Leonards and LeBron Jameses of the league, which they needed. And I feel like this locks MPJ into a starting spot at the 3, which is where he needs to be. I think this Denver team is going to be much better. And I think JaVale McGee will improve their defense as like a true center, like a real rim protecting, rim running center off the bench. Because it'll give Denver a totally different look with Jokic, or when Jokic isn't on the floor. Their team will operate totally different, which could be great. That stylistic shift. So, and this probably means less minutes for Millsap and Green, maybe more so J. Michael Green, which is probably better for the team. Like giving those minutes to Gordon for sure. So Denver's a big winner. A lot of people probably are. A lot of Lakers fans are disappointed they didn't really do anything. We'll see what the buyout market holds. The Lakers have a great team. If Davis and LeBron are healthy, they have an awesome roster and are arguably still the favorites in the West. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like the Clippers are losers because I feel like you gave up 2 second-round picks to flip Lou Williams for Rondo, who maybe he's better defensively, but... And I guess like he's been part of title-winning teams and Lou Williams never has, but I don't know. Was that really did the Clippers actually improve their team? Or did they just flip guys who move the needle about the same amount? And they wasted 2 second-round picks to do so. I don't know. How about play Luke Kennard? And I feel like the Raptors won yesterday. Yeah, the Matt Thomas trade where they traded bench shooter Matt Thomas, who's a really good shooter and a pretty solid player, to the Jazz for a future second, which they're probably like, yeah, we can develop another guy like this because we literally do it all the time. Because, I mean, Norm Powell, Fred VanVleet, Thomas, Terrence Davis, Terrence Davis, I think is the guy I'm thinking of. Among other guys, Chris Boucher, like they develop second round guys and late first round guys into top tier talents or into far better talents than what people expect them to be. They just do this constantly as an organization. So instead of signing him to like a future deal, which Terrence Davis, who I just mentioned, I think it's because Terrence Mann is the one that was on the Clippers and Terrence Davis is on the Raptors. They traded Terrence Davis to the Kings for a second round pick. I was like, that's kind of strange, but thing is, they can draft another guy and develop him on a cheap rather than signing these guys to free agent contracts that are going to be more expensive than what they're paying them on their rookie deals. It kind of makes sense. I like the trade for the Jazz though because they added more shooting. They still don't have like necessarily a big wing defender type, really, but you can. I mean, the cliche is you can never have enough shooting, and that's true. And I think Matt Thomas might be more than just a shooter. So, and for the Kings, like, they just add more quality talent. Davis shouldn't be like super expensive in restricted free agency, I wouldn't think. Because, I mean, he's been really good in a small role, but, I mean, he still played a fairly small role. So I think, he would be a reasonable guy for them to sign or to re-sign and use for, like, their future team. And they might give him a chance at a bigger role, and he might thrive in it. And, like, probably will, or could thrive in it, especially with a better coaching staff. Cat. Scare me half to death. So I like those trades for both teams. I just trust the Raptors organization. The big deal they made though is they traded Norman Powell yesterday for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. And while Powell's been playing great, like Trent's a younger player who's also been playing great, and I think is a little taller and longer than Powell. Although maybe he's not quite as thick built, but he's an athletic prospect. Like, I thought it was kind of a curious trade for the Trailblazers more than the Raptors. I think for the Raptors, like, and Hood's been playing okay after coming back from a major injury. His contract's a little more expensive than I would have had liked that summer, but, you know, it's not the worst thing ever. So I would say, like, the Raptors, small winners, even though they didn't move, like, Lowry, like, it would be cool to see Lowry retire in Toronto. And if they didn't get anything super valuable for him, like, maybe allow him to find his place in free agency or whatever, or re-up him, who knows? Like, the Raptors know what they're doing as an organization. Masai Ujiri knows what he is doing. So I would just lean in and trust in their process. I don't think the Celtics are winners. Don't necessarily know if they're losers either. They didn't really improve. I don't think the Celtics, like, improved their team. So maybe you say that that's a loser, but, or at least I don't think they improved it a ton if they did. I like getting Evan Fournier. But I'm confused by the other move, like trading Theus and Javonte Green for... You know what? I'm just going to call him a loser just because that trade doesn't make sense to me. How about that? I'm just going to call them losers for that. But maybe getting rid of Green opens up... Well, they brought in Fournier, though, so I don't see how that opens up opportunity for Langford or Nesmith this year. I'm just confused. A lot of Knicks fans are upset that they didn't do anything more than they did, and I'm like, what did you expect them to do? Knicks fans have no patience. Like, and I get it's been a long time, but the reason it's been a long time is because they have no patience. They're constantly wanting the team. Well, they're okay with being patient for like a year and a half, but after that, no, we gotta kick this thing into overdrive, and then everything gets screwed up. The Knicks just need to stick with what they're doing. You know, they flipped Austin Rivers for a younger, or for a wing, a young rotation wing in Terrence Ferguson who still has some upside. Solid move. They got involved in a trade, or they got involved in a deal that was bigger for, like, other teams. They helped facilitate the deal, and I think they improved their long-term aspects slightly with that move, with that deal. Yeah, Rivers has been good for them this year, but the Knicks, it's not about being a mid-rung team this year. Maybe sneaking into the back end of the playoffs this year. That's fool's gold. It's about working for a contending future. You know, they don't need to make stupid moves now to become just solidify themselves as an average team and lower their ceiling for the future. That would be stupid. So Knicks fans, patience, shut up and wait. I'm glad my Grizzlies didn't do anything rash at the deadline. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen, like, maybe us consolidate some of, like, our ridiculous amount of depth of just useful players into something. But we didn't need to make a bad deal either. And considering what some of these guys were getting moved for, maybe it's better we sat out. If Oladipo got basically nothing, then, I mean, what were we going to get for Dylan Brooks, Gorgie Jing, and, you know, the stuff we had? And we definitely didn't need to throw any draft picks around. Like, deplete our future picks. Like, I like having my own picks and other people's picks than having none. At least at this stage of, like, where we are as a team. And there's some people who are like, well, some of these other teams, like the Suns, maybe need to make a deal. Nah, I think the Suns are pretty solid. I think they just need to continue to build continuity. I don't know if there was anything they really could do with what they had that was going to really shake up their roster or really, like, put them over the top. I don't think they had any sensible move to make. I thought the Sixers did a good job with what they had, and without jettisoning any of their good young players like Maxey and Thibault, getting George Hill was a solid move. Because I think some of the trades I was seeing that were netting them Kyle Lowry. I don't want to give up Tyrese Maxey if I'm the Sixers. Like, I'm really high on Maxey, and I think they really are a guy like George Hill, who actually a lot of times steps up his play in the postseason, or at the very least he has meaningful postseason games. I think was a better move than them swinging for the fences and then killing their long term. Because Embiid has kicked in another level this year and might have a slight... It's like, it's even possible that Embiid could still get better, which sounds crazy. Ben Simmons is getting better. Simmons still has room to grow, and he is growing. We're seeing it this year. You keep Maxey and Thibault around to grow around them. I like Philly's future, and they don't need to screw that up for a guy in Lowry who... He's 35. And a free agent this offseason. You don't give up Maxey and a first and something else for Lowry. Like, I just think that would have been bad business. I think that would have been bad team building, personally. Because LeBron is not going to keep... Like, the Lakers are absolutely, contenders this year and probably will be next year. LeBron is going to fall off eventually. And it's going to happen. And it's probably going to happen soon. If I'm at teams like the Sixers, the Bucks with Giannis and like the guys they've got, although the Bucks are contenders now, and the Sixers are contenders now, but the Sixers can be the best team in the league 2 years from now. The Celtics can be the best team in the league 2 years from now. The Nets have guys like they can be the best team for sure. Like, and they might be right now. But the Lakers are going to fall off whenever LeBron starts to fall off. The Clippers, well, they're not guaranteed to have Leonard and George beyond what, this season or next season? One of the two. So we'll see there. Dallas is ascending. Denver just leveled up. Utah, like, Donovan Mitchell's still getting better, and Gobert still improves in areas like every year, like sneakily. Like he is far more impactful offensively than people give him credit for. So, anyway, I think that we're not, or I just don't think Philly needs to shorten their window. Like, I don't think they need to accelerate their process. Because I think they're title contenders right now with the roster they have. And they're going to be even better contenders 2 years from now. Because of the roster they have today. Than if they made a trade for Lowry. So I think the Sixers won the deadline by not doing something, not overreaching in the market. And the Thunder won just because they keep adding picks, and they keep making little deals and little deals and little deals on the sides of the big deals they've been a part of. Their future, like, I think they're at 17 firsts and 17 seconds, or 17 firsts and 18 seconds now over the next 5 years or 7. It's something like that. Either way, that's ridiculous. But yeah, with that being said, I know the last couple of days I haven't done any like NFL draft or as much NFL draft related or like positional rankings or anything. I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna fire those up hardcore next week because NBA trade deadline is passed and my sister's wedding will be out of the way, which got my sister's rehearsal dinner tonight and her wedding is tomorrow. Family's super excited for that, and excited for it to be over. A lot of work, people. But anyway, exciting times. So I want to thank everyone who tuned in today, who popped in today, and for everyone who is listening after the fact on the archive. Appreciate you very much, because all of you guys live and after the fact really help out the channel. If you've liked my takes today, please hit the thumbs up. Rating the channel or rating the stuff really helps for the channel's growth and helps it in the YouTube algorithm. If you want to keep getting, if you want to be notified of the show, if you want to keep, if you want to be a part of the Blind Eye Media family, or maybe the Blind Eye Army, or I'm sure eventually y'all come up with some like catchy little thing. If y'all want to be a part of the community here and keep the show going, please subscribe. Hit the bell next to the subscribe button and set notifications for all, so that you're always notified when I go live or if I post something. And please drop a comment afterward for people listening on the archive, or just if you're watching live. If you want to pop over the archive, if you want to give me some feedback, give me your opinions. I will check any and all comments on my archive moving forward, and so anything, or offer some advice on some stuff I can improve, I'm totally down, because all criticism is good criticism, something I can learn from. So anyway, thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate you very much. I hope y'all have a super, super blessed weekend.